Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold and silver stories for the week ended October 29th, 2016. U.S. political instability may boost gold and silver. Let's see why and what I'm talking about with that headline. FBI reopens Hillary Clinton criminal investigation after emails found on Clinton aide Huma Abedin and her husband Anthony Weiner's computers and devices. Miss Abedin's computer and email were linked to Clinton's private server. That may be an important point in the investigation, because only Huma Abedin had an email connected to that server, and Miss Abedin is Miss Clinton's closest personal confidant. WikiLeaks reveals President's knowledge of Clinton's private email server. This is something that I had mentioned back in August of 2015, that if Miss Clinton is the Secretary of State reporting to the President, he either knows or should have known that she was using a private server, and he most likely communicated with her via email and probably would have seen that Miss Clinton was communicating with him on a server that is not a government server. WikiLeaks revealed Clinton Inc. and Bill Clinton's circle of enrichment and how he used the Clinton Foundation based on a memo released to get speaking fees and other engagement fees in connection with his Clinton Foundation activities and the Clinton Global Initiative. Even the Wall Street Journal asked this week, why isn't the IRS investigating the Clinton Foundation? U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch takes the fifth in response to written congressional questions relating to the Iran deal. Miss Lynch, if you recall, she's the one who met with Bill Clinton on the Phoenix airport tarmac before the findings of the Clinton investigation, the FBI investigation, before those results were released. And she purportedly last week tried to stop the release of the Comey letter to Congress, indicating that they were taking another look at the Clinton email investigation. Now, the top story of the week was the breaking FBI to reopen the Clinton email case. Interestingly, there was so much in the WikiLeaks the past week. There was one that showed that the Clinton campaign manager, John Podesta, lost his phone getting out of a cab. His staff was aware that his Gmail account had been compromised and notified him. And he also had a password similar to a different spelling of password. Yet, the DNC, Hillary Clinton, and U.S. intelligence agencies continue to blame the Russians. The reason I mention all of these things and how they relate to gold and silver, and we'll get further into it, is you are seeing a pattern of corruption, perception of corruption, you're seeing ineptitude, and you're seeing their explanations border on totally unbelievable. Now, the press is complicit in this. They've largely ignored Clinton Inc. They've largely ignored the Project Veritas information about tying DNC people to inciting violence at Trump rallies, and also showing evidence that the PACs and the Clinton campaign, which are supposed to be separate, appear not to be. But the press instead chose to spend the week touting polls showing Hillary Clinton with an 11 or 12 point lead over Donald Trump, leading me to say that a new poll shows that Clinton has a triple-digit lead over Trump. It does not seem possible, given the levels of corruption that apparently are being reported and the lack of enthusiasm for Miss Clinton, that she would somehow have an 11 to 12 point lead when other polls excuse me, show that the race is relatively tight. But the mainstream media, which includes CNN, ABC, Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, are clearly trying to influence the election and to promote the narrative that there's nothing to see here in these WikiLeaks, and Miss Clinton is indeed ahead, and she's already starting to pick her cabinet. They're also dismissing the president, Miss Clinton, and the press, They're ridiculing and dismissing any chance that elections can be rigged, even though Ms. Clinton and the president and the press have insisted in the past that elections can and have been rigged. Again, it strains the credibility of the citizens listening to this when it's clearly just partisan talk. Now, the main story that cannot be ignored, however, by the press is the FBI move to reopen the investigation. And why now? Well, maybe it's a diversion from the damaging effects of WikiLeaks. Some people take the view that the FBI, the DOJ, they're all in the tank for the current administration, and they want that administration to continue under Hillary Clinton. So they just throw out something nebulous, it doesn't really say much, and it kind of diverts attention from WikiLeaks, Project Veritas, and any other information that may be damaging to Ms. Clinton. It's one view. Another view is it's FBI Director Comey. It's his attempt to rehabilitate his own reputation and the reputation of the FBI to try to restore confidence. Now that's a dangerous game, because if he does put forth an indictment, then perhaps the confidence would be restored. But if he doesn't, I think that his reputation would be further damaged. Another thing, this is probably more likely, is he is probably trying to get ahead of any leaks that were in the Abedin or Weiner emails. These are emails that the FBI either had that were damaging and sat on, that would imply some level of corruption by the FBI. That may not be the case. Or they should have had these emails that would have formed part of the investigation, because any reasonable investigator would investigating Hillary Clinton and her emails and her handling of classified information would have known that Huma Abedin shared an email address on that server, and they would have asked, you would think, for those emails and not have to have stumbled upon them by accident or surreptitiously. No, that surreptitiously means on the sly, stealthily, serendipitously, by serendipity, by finding them by chance through their investigation of Anthony Weiner's email activities and Snapchat activities with 15-year-old women. So if he knows and the FBI knows that either they should have had this information or that it's going to come out anyway, then he probably wanted to stay ahead of that leak that might have come out next week or in the coming days. Also, he may have wanted to get ahead of any new Clinton Podesta emails that actually are going to be released that show intent or further blatant examples of extremely careless handling of classified information. So far, we've seen about 35,000 of the 50,000 Podesta emails, and none of them come from Hillary Clinton. It would be mind-boggling for him to never have communicated with Hillary Clinton by email, at least to discuss her yoga classes. So I think next week we're going to see some Clinton emails, and they could be, if you follow how WikiLeaks, their MO, it seems to be to save the best for last. And as we head towards the election, there may be some damaging Clinton emails coming out that show that she knew about her or showed some type of intent to put the U.S. at risk, or that basically there's just some more examples of extreme careless handling of classified information, which of course will create further outrage against the FBI. But at least if they've already reopened the investigation, then they can say, look, we're on the case, we'll take this into consideration too. And of course, they may want to have the investigation open to be able to respond to these obvious questions regarding why the Abedin devices and emails were not retrieved earlier. And why was Obama's role in supervising Ms. Clinton not examined? So all of this has the impact, bringing it back to gold and silver. If you go through the headlines again, everything we just talked about, it makes the government, Hillary Clinton, the press, look corrupt and colluding. Now, on the flip side, there's an attempt to make Trump look unfit. And they've done a good job of that. And there's some validity to his background that may lead people to have the perception that he is not fit. But if you have a perception that Trump is not fit, and then you would think that by contrast, well, the Democratic nominee, the former Secretary of State, you would think it would be no contest that this person is upright, they've got experience, they know what they're doing. But instead what you're seeing is large swaths of the population have no confidence in either of the candidates. However, in Trump's favor, he has picked up on the corruption in the government, and he has been talking for the last 2 weeks about draining the swamp, and that's something that may resonate with voters. We'll see. But in any event, it really has the impact of destroying the confidence in this. If you think about it, the U.S. is a two-party system. Normally, you have a Democrat or Republican. Not that you need a two-party system to have a stable government, but the United States has had that two-party system, and that is one of the features of the United States political stability. And that political stability is what gives the dollar strength. It's what attracts capital into the U.S. stock market. And so if that two-party system is undermined, confidence in the United States dollar, the United States stock market may be lost. Now, if you look at the Republicans and the Democrats, neither party seems to have represented the will of its party members. We saw with the WikiLeaks how Bernie Sanders was pushed aside in many ways, trying to stop his candidacy. And we also saw with the Republicans how they tried to stop Donald Trump. So it appeared that both parties had decided that it was going to be another matchup of Bush and Clinton. It almost looks like the two parties had grown into an oligopoly structure where they were colluding to figure, look, we win either way. You know, we get a Bush or a Clinton, so let's have a go at it. Well, what happens now? If Trump wins, the Democratic Party is destroyed if Clinton doesn't win, because how can they rally the grassroots when they basically burned the grassroots with Bernie Sanders? If Clinton wins, how can the Republicans put up any type of fight without including Donald Trump, who has been the standard bearer in this fight against what is the perceived or actual Democratic corruption? So you either have, if Trump wins, you have no Republican Party backing, or some Republican Party backing, and you have a destroyed Democratic Party. If Clinton wins, you have a Democratic Party, I guess, or Clintonista Party led by Clinton, and you have no viable opposition party. That is the type of political system that you do have in third world, what they call banana republics, where you have one party or you just have a cult of personality leader, which would be if you had Trump, because he would not be backed by a party, and would be Clinton because she wouldn't be backed by a party or even opposed by an opposing party. So, having said all that, and if you think about the current state of play, it's surprising that the U.S. dollar is holding up. That's because people think that the U.S. political system is strong enough to survive this, but we're seeing this is not just Richard Nixon. This seems to involve the Department of Justice, the FBI, the president, the Democratic and Republican parties, all seemingly, and the press, undermining the confidence in the system. Now, the press, to its credit, during Watergate was providing that safeguard against corruption in government by doing investigative journalism and trying to find out, to follow the money, what was actually happening with Watergate. Right now what you have is an obvious attempt of the press to cover for the current administration. That leads to lack of distrust in most of the institutions. And again, these institutions are based on trust and confidence, and they are seemingly doing a good job of undermining their own confidence. Top economic stories of the week. And again, that means, in my humble view, that is good for gold and silver. because if the dollar is based on confidence in the system and confidence is lost to any varying degree, that's good for gold and silver, because gold and silver are not dependent on any policies or on being honest or not being honest, or they don't conduct monetary policy. They just are, and that is the attraction of gold and silver, and has been and has helped many people who live in countries who've undergone a lot of political instability. They've managed to preserve their purchasing power with gold and silver. Okay, let's get to the top economic stories, and then we'll get to the top stories of the week. The third quarter GDP hit 2.9%, driven by soybean exports and spendings on utilities and Obamacare. Now, when you spend money on utilities and Obamacare, they view that as good for the GDP. We view that as money we'd rather not have spent on utilities and Obamacare, because you really don't get anything more for spending more on Obamacare. In fact, in the example of Obamacare, you don't get anything because you have high deductibles and you're just spending money and it doesn't do you any good. And utilities, your quality of life may be a little better, but you would prefer maybe the weather was a little cooler and you didn't have to put the air conditioning on as much. So to say that the economy is growing because of spending on those items, and then also the GDP is doing well because the U.S. took advantage of a soybean shortage in Argentina or South America, that it managed to have extra exports, that is not a sign of a strengthening economy. But as we mentioned, the U.S. has a vested interest in keeping the stock market and U.S. dollar strong. Those are both strategic assets. And we may see, in order to protect the dollar, the Fed may have to raise interest rates. But then if the stock market crashes, the Fed may have to go back to Congress and say, hey, we need a strong stock market. We can't have all these losses. Can we buy shares? So it doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be that the Fed strategy going forward, again, if Donald Trump doesn't get in, we don't know what will happen then and who will remain on the Federal Reserve. But if Hillary Clinton wins and the dollar goes down because people feel that the U.S. system has been compromised or is undermined, and the stock market crashes, we may see Congress give that power to the Fed to buy shares if indeed the market crashes in response to any interest rate hike that may happen in December or January next year. All right, now on to the normal part of the program that we always cover. Gold and silver. Gold closed last week at $1,274, up about $9 from last week, and silver also tacked on about 23 cents. So both gold and silver rose last week. They did not really react to the political instability that's been going on, and that's also because political instability takes a while for people to realize it's happening. They don't really see what's going on, and I think it really depends on the next few weeks what happens with the FBI investigation, what other leaks come out, who wins the election, and whether we will have increased political instability or whether things will just kind of work themselves out and people will go back to nothing to see here and nothing will happen. However, I do think that if there is increased political instability, you will see an increase in the prices of gold or silver. And the gold-silver ratio dropped a little bit this week. It's still above 70. It closed the week at 71.91 to 1. During the week, we did a few podcasts. We did one on the monsoon season in India. You can check that out and how it impacts gold demand. We did note a few stories during the week about Indian press. The Indian press is like the U.S. press working for the government, trying to convince people, even in Diwali, that they shouldn't buy the gold gift-giving season in India, that they shouldn't buy gold. They tell them they should buy ETFs, they should buy other assets. It's incessant. If you look at the Indian newspapers, they constantly talk about why buying gold isn't the smartest thing to do, and that you should buy these government gold bonds, or you should buy gold ETFs, or maybe you should buy diamonds. I mean, it's just it's incredible how they're actually. I mean, I'm sure when Indian people read this, because they've been buying gold for 5,000 years, they probably just throw the paper in the garbage. U.S. economic data looked like the U.S. manufacturing PMI, this is a kind of a anomaly. It went up. It wasn't expected to go up, and it went up. It hasn't. Well, maybe that's because it's just before the election. They're trying to put a nice shine on things. Well, maybe that number was that good. It's hard to tell. Fed chatter. More nonsense from the Fed presidents talking about rate hikes. Although Bullard, St. Louis Fed President Bullard, said last week that maybe we only need one interest rate hike. And that's kind of where I've been saying for the last 2 years that the Fed will raise rates. Not that they can't raise rates or won't raise rates, but if they do, they'll do one. I said they would do one last year, and they did. And then I said they'll do one this year, and they probably will. That's not normalizing rates or raising interest rates or normalizing rates. That's just satisfying people that they say what they're going to do and they end up doing it. And it's also designed just to make sure that the dollar doesn't go down further because, and Bullard admitted that basically the U.S. only has to keep rates higher than everybody else and it can stay the world's reserve currency. I mean, all the other central banks are negative or zero. I think Bank of England is zero. So as long as the U.S. puts in a quarter point or half a point difference between the other central banks, that's enough to keep people. I mean, they've been talking about rate hikes as if they're going to do 4, 6, 7. You just dismiss all that talk. Chicago Fed president was talking about he wants 3 hikes before the end of 17. Yeah, Fed President Williams said he wanted 4 this year. They all said they wanted 4. Yellen said 4 to 6 over the next 2 years. They're just talking to keep the dollar up. Now, the U.S. Mint has come to life with its sales. We won't go through them all. We'll have a full report on the U.S. Mint October sales early next week when they finally close the books on Monday. But gold and silver sales at the U.S. Mint have increased, and you can check out the daily reports from the U.S. Mint at the blog post, which is linked to at the bottom of this YouTube video. And here's the pitch. If you are interested in buying gold or silver, not a recommendation that you do so, but if you do and you're so inclined, please do so through the Smaulgld website. There's plenty of links where you can and banners where you can compare prices and shipping on your gold and silver purchases. And if you do buy from the site, Smaulgld gets a small commission, but you pay no more, no less than if you had purchased your gold or silver from the websites or gone to those websites directly rather than clicking on any of the links or banners here. Now the YouTube channel has no ads on it, and other than my talking up the affiliate links, but the Smaulgld site does have some ads on it. The whole site is supported by advertising and commissions. There's no subscription fee for Smaulgld. During the week we covered just what I was talking about, but in much more detail on Fed President Bullard's comments on only needing one rate hike. There's a full podcast YouTube on that available on YouTube and also on the on this blog post. U.S. economic data, well, home prices are now at the same all-time high of 2006. But an important point to note, while home prices are up, sales are not. So they've managed to boost the price of the asset, but they've also managed to boost through monetary policy, zero interest rate policy, and QE to have boosted the home prices up, but they've put them out of reach for many people whose wages haven't gone up and cannot afford the higher home prices. Interesting, if you're interested in real estate, there's an article here on the dark side of rising home prices. They're not all they're cracked up to be. Consumer confidence fell by, according to Bloomberg, and the Richmond Fed came in at negative expectations. So the economic data coming in is not really good. It's not accelerating. It's not strengthening. It's robust. But there you go. Fed Williams says best time for rate rises in December. This is the guy who's been talking rate hikes all year. So maybe they will. They probably will do one in December. But at that point, it's so what? Because they were supposed to have done between 2015 and 2016 6 rate hikes. So if they get 2 in, they're off on their plans and their projections. More U.S. Mint sales updates. You'll see those full reports out next week. Is Russia preparing to sell her gold? We did a podcast on a story that appeared in Pravda about Russia's plans to sell some of its gold reserves. Briefly, Russia has added more gold than any other central bank the last 3 to 5 years, even more than the People's Bank of China. And now there's a story out, and we analyze that story, whether there's any truth to it, in this blog post and this YouTube video. Whoa, getting a little too fast there. Again, a lot of reporting out of the U.S. Mint, all good numbers. I'm not going to spoil the. You can go and look at the blog post, but I'm not going to spoil the final number. And that's about it for the week. We also did a report on Indian silver imports in September, and there's a YouTube on it. And also on Monday, we'll be releasing the Indian gold import data, which is also down, as the silver import data is down this year so far. However, they are expecting both gold and silver imports to improve in October as the gift-giving, Diwali season, the wedding season in India takes hold. That's it for this week. Please remember to subscribe to smaulgld.com and also to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And the way you do that is there's plenty of opportunities on the site within articles to click on links to sign up for Smaulgld, or you could just always go to the front page of Smaulgld, type in your email address, it's free, and you will be updated when and as we deem it important. Otherwise, we don't send, the reason I say that is we don't send out an email on each and every blog post that we make. So if you're interested in catching up on everything, you have to go to the website and check it every day. Thank you very much.